Okay, here we go. All right, anybody guessing where we're up to?
Maybe like.
Yep.
No, guessing. I said guessing.
You sound way too short.
Word's out on the street.
Nice.
Come to Atlanta.
Let's see, we're on Citizen to fill in. Where are we, guys? What did we get up to?
Can someone remind them maybe to turn the music off?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, right?
No idea.
Can they tell?
Okay.
I'm gonna cheat.
You're cheating,
I
hey.
am.
All right. Hello there.
Good morning.
Yes, Geula, what's up?
We were talking about tefillin last week.
Hi.
And I don't remember how it came up, but it came up either in the Gemara or connected to the Gemara. And my husband was telling me that the tefillin are actually more punished than the tips of the Kohen Gadol.
The tefillin and the tzitz, what about them?
The tefillin have a higher level of kedusha than the tips of the Kohen Gadol.
They're worn higher than the tefillin, yes, that's true. I mean, the tefillin are worn higher than the tzitz, yes, that is correct.
Yeah. I thought it was an interesting
Yeah?
piece of...
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
All right, so we are...
One of mine doesn't like things like that. No. I can pick them up and move them.
All right, let's see.
Maybe kiss one and then they
Oh,
move
it's
again. I was hoping she'd be the one that would like to.
All right, so we are... Thank you.
Oh, they got it.
Yeah. Second time, that was the key.
Yeah.
All right, so we are in section 4, chapter 6. We will start again from letter Tes, 9.
On 316?
I don't know, is it?
Test, yeah. 316, Nuhini.
All right.
Page 316 in
316 it is.
our scroll.
All right, here we go. So, we've described the function of tzitzis and tefillin and how they are conduits for connection, and they set us up for where we need to be, as well as getting the world in the place that it needs to be for the shefa to come down. So these are mitzvahs that essentially start in the morning, and he said that the reason for that is because the nighttime leaves a certain degree of impurity in the world, lowers the world's level, and it's through the tzitzis and through the tefillin that we're able to raise the world back up to get it to the level that it needs to be at. So now, he's now going to connect this with the davening, because as we know, these mitzvahs, tzitzis, and tefillin are very much connected to davening, and he's going to explain how this works. So, v'hine. Right. Once a person has been distinguished through his tzitzis, and he is crowned with his tefillin, niskenu loy sidrei hatefillah. So then our sages established the order of the davening to follow it. L'sakein kafi hamitzarech, to rectify, to fix, to correct, to establish properly that which needs to be done. V'akavana b'chlal, and the concept here in general is lahamid abriya kula, to establish all of creation, kol ha'olamos, all the different worlds, b'matzav ha'ra'i, so it should be in a proper state, that it is appropriate, l'sheyushba bam hashpa ha'elyon, that the shefa that comes down from on high should be able to take hold within the world. As well as to draw this shefa from before Hashem, aleihem, to this creation, kafi hamitzarech, as is needed. So basically he has said there are two things that the davening accomplishes. And these are in conjunction with the tzitzis and tefillin. They are, number one, preparing the world for receiving the shefa, and number two, actually drawing the shefa down. So the Rabbi Naiman here, he says that perhaps the two concepts of tzitzis and tefillin, as he mentioned them, are there for these two purposes. The tzitzis are there to kind of get the world in the proper state as it needs to be, and then the tefillin are the conduit that actually draws down that shefa. So these two elements of the tzitzis and the tefillin, which are affecting the world, getting it in its proper state, and then drawing down the shefa and having the conduit to allow that to work, that happens through the tzitzis and tefillin, and this is what empowers the davening, essentially. So when you have these steps going into the davening, then the davening becomes that much more powerful because it has these things established already. Okay? Good? Okay. Alright, moving on. V'ulam. However, klal hatfila, the entire process of davening, mischalek la'arba chalakim, is split into four separate sections. Harishain akarbanos. The first is the karbanos, the offerings, which is the part of davening that follows brachos. Now, brachos he already mentioned that was kind of a it's kind of not really part of the davening. Brachos is kind of part of the waking up. It's part of just getting your day started. It's before davening, really. So the first part of davening begins with karbanos, which are all the paragraphs that we talk about the offerings that were brought in the Beis Hamikdash. Hasheni Psukah de Zimra. The second is the section of Psukah de Zimra, the verses of praise, of thanks, of song to Hashem. And that starts with Baruch Sha'amar and goes until the brachos for Shema. Shlishi Kriya Shema Baruch Hashem. The third section is the brachos for Shema and Shema itself, which immediately follow Psukah de Zimra. And then Harvi'i Atfila Mashla Achara. The last is Shmona Esrei and that which follows. So the setup of our davening is split into these four sections, and he's going to describe each section on its own. Okay? Alright, so let's go. So number one, our karbanos. The first thing that we have is the offerings, the sacrifices that were brought. Obviously we don't have the actual offerings today, but the davening is there to represent them and to take their place. I'm just going to mute everybody. Please, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. Okay, if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself. Okay. So, the concept of karbanos, hakavana b'hem b'chlal. The concept, the general concept of the karbanos with davening is ulataher ha'olam kulay. It's to purify the world. Ulahasir mimenu kol ma shehu ikuv umeniya al bias hashefa al yambay. And is to remove any obstacle that could stop the shefa from coming down from on high. So, as we mentioned just in the previous paragraph, the concept, one of the concepts of davening is that it brings the shefa down. So the karbanos are necessary to stop any impediments, any obstacles that might get in the way of that actually happening. Now, how exactly that works, I think he is going to talk about it a little bit more later on, but I think the basic idea is that the purpose of karbanos is to it's got a couple of things involved. One is the idea of understanding that all physicality is inherently to serve Hashem. So if we can internalize that our focus on physical things is for the service of Hashem, which is essentially what we're doing with the carbon, is that we're taking our money and we're buying something with it and we're giving it to Hashem. So in doing so, we're making not only ourselves subservient, but we're showing that the physical things that makes up our world, those physical things they're for Hashem. They're all part of Hashem's service. So in doing so, we can purify the world and allow the obstacles to be dissolved. Because the obstacles to the Shefa coming down are doing things wrong, as we've mentioned, and not understanding that everything comes from Hashem. So by giving to Hashem, giving our physical things to Hashem, that is certainly counteracting any of that negativity. Furthermore, we're also understanding that physical things can be elevated. Right? When you make an animal into a carbon, or you make some flour, or you make it into a carbon, then what you're doing is you're sanctifying it. You're making something better. You're uplifting it. You're adding holiness. And that, again, is part of the concept of davening here, is that the whole world is lacking in holiness, and the concept of a carbon is to elevate that which we do have. Take that which is physical, elevate it, make it serve a spiritual purpose, and in this way you're accomplishing this removal of the obstacles as is being mentioned. Got it? Okay. Next. Look at the Zimra, the verses of praise, of song. Hakavana Bahem Bechlal, the general intention with these is Legalois Arpanav Yisbarach, is to reveal the light of Hashem's face, Al Yedei HaTehilos Sh'anu Mishalim Boi, through the praises that we are praising Hashem with, U'Mesapem B'Shivchai, and we're speaking of His greatness. Shezeh Inyan Tula'oi Habar Yisbarach U'Ma'aseh. Because this idea, the idea of spreading Hashem's light to the world, revealing it, Hashem connected that to the action of singing His praises. So it's not that singing Hashem's praises maybe even makes sense to accomplish this, but Hashem made it that's how it works. So logically it might not make any sense. It could be, the way Ramchal is saying it could be the fact that we sing Hashem's praises shouldn't relate in any way to bringing Hashem's light into the world. Nevertheless, Hashem designed it that way and made it that when we do this, when we sing the praises of Hashem, we say Psukei de Zimra, that brings this light, it reveals the light of Hashem to the world. Now, it might be that there's a logical connection, and that through our internalizing Hashem's greatness, that is essentially revealing the light of Hashem. It could be that's what it is. But the way Ramchal is saying it, this is a decree. Hashem designed the world that when you do this, this is what happens. Not that we necessarily understand it. Okay. Dahainu, this means Behilul Lefanav, when we praise Hashem, we sing before Him, V'hu Inyan Habaycha B'Shirei Zimra. And this is the idea of the verse that states that Hashem shows songs of praise. Meaning to say that Hashem chose these as the medium through which His light is shown unto the world. So, whether it makes sense to us or not is not relevant. The point is that the Torah tells us, Hashem says, I am a Baruch B'Shirei Zimra, I have chosen songs of praise. And when you do that, you sing the praises of Hashem, that will illuminate the world with Hashem's light. So, very important. Okay, good? Okay. Next. Kriya Shema
That's kind of
B'chasem.
like Shomei Rav Aseto.
What do you mean?
Harbanos takes away everything that's Medea, and then the Tzukah Zimmer brings it out.
Yes, meaning it is a two-step process. First step is to stop or remove any obstacles that will keep the shefa from coming down, and then the second step is to actually bring it down. Now, I will say, though, that he hasn't used the word shefa in this second step. The second step, he's only talked about the or panav, the light. So I don't know that that's the same as the shefa. I'm assuming it's not the same. I'm assuming that shefa is what comes down, and the or, the light, is the backdrop that's needed for the shefa to work.
Say it again, the or.
The way I understand it is that the light, the or, that light of Hashem, is what's needed for the world to understand the shefa. In other words, shefa,
Okay.
good shefa comes down, blessing comes down, the trees are blossoming, the grass is growing, right? Everything's
don't see
going
it,
good.
yeah, right.
If you don't have that light of Hashem, then it doesn't mean anything to anybody. You know, it's kind of missing. It just gets overlooked. It might happen, it might be there, but you don't have that connection to Hashem. I think the light is that people recognize this is Hashem smiling at us, basically. And once you have that, then the shefa can be appreciated. But again, he doesn't say this. This is just my understanding of it.
So what would you call the light then? If you could use one or two words.
It's the revelation of Hashem. It's revealing Hashem in the world. Which, the revelation is of the shefa, hopefully. Hopefully it's good shefa that we're revealing, but it's the revelation of Hashem. It's the connection of seeing Hashem and everything that goes on.
I forgot what we said. We had mentioned once. If you take away the things that are Moinea, the shefa, does that automatically bring down shefa? I forgot what we said.
No, just removing obstacles is not enough to bring down the shefa.
Right.
Now, it can clear the way so that when shefa needs to come, it can come.
So we're clearing the
But
way.
you need to do both. You got to clear the way, then you got to turn on the tap. You know,
Then the R. So the shefa hasn't come down yet.
shefa has not come down yet.
So
the
it'll have to be a
faucet-
preparatory step.
But there is a faucet.
Yeah.
That's a neat way to look at it.
Appreciate it.
And
Okay.
this unlocks the faucet, so we have the potential to have the faucet.
We're just waiting for the shefa.
We're not waiting. No, we're not waiting for shefa. We're actively
We're
pursuing it. We're actively pursuing it. We have to
turning
go
on-
through the actions of drawing it down.
Right.
Okay, next step. Kriya Shema u'birchaseh. Shema and its brachas. Kvar bayarnu and Yonim Bechlal. We've already talked about the general idea of Shema and its brachas. U'levad ma shebayarnu, and in addition to what we've already explained, nichlal behem oidin acher. There's another idea that's included with them. V'hu, and this is Kihine sidrei koinenius habriya v'shtal shalusa. Because the order, excuse me, the setup of the world, all of its mechanisms, all of the processes of bringing down the shefa through all the different worlds. We've already explained how that works back in the first section of our book. Because everything that comes into this world goes level by level. It goes from the kaiches, which are the roots, the sources, and the highest levels directly from Hashem, ad agashmim, and then they travel down through all of the different layers, as we've learned so many times, down to the physical world. V'ula, however, Gazra Chachma al Yena, Hashem's divine wisdom decreed, that in order for all of creation to receive the shefa from Hashem, they first need to connect from one level to the next, from down to up. Every level that's underneath needs to connect to the level which is directly above it. And then the upper level has to connect to the level above it. V'chein al derech zeh ad koiches hashroshim, and that process continues all the way up until we reach the koiches, which are the roots, the source that Hashem has put into the world. V'chein yitola b'yizbarach, and those shoroshim, those roots, those are directly connected to Hashem Himself. V'yushba lahem shifai, and Hashem gives His shefa to those roots. V'achar kach yispashit hashefa milmalo lemata. Then that shefa can then spread from the highest levels down through the different levels. B'chol madregas abriya karoi, down to all the different levels and places within creation as is necessary. V'yashuvu v'yisyatzvu kulam madregasayim, and then they will in turn establish themselves each in its own place, in its own level, in its own way. V'polam, to do what they need to do, kifi mashasudrar lahem, based on what was established for them. So meaning to say, and we've learned about this process many times, the amount of layers that something needs to get to go through, to get here, is very significant. We don't know numbers. He hasn't given us any numbers, as far as I know. But we do know the process. The process is that Hashem puts the shefa into the koiches, which are the roots, and then they spread it down into the next level, and they spread it down to the next level, and down, etc., until it comes down here into our world. So, in order for that process to occur, he says we have to start that process down here. Meaning, we have to begin by connecting all of those levels. So we're here on the bottom, and we have one level of this process within reach. So what we have to do, our job is to connect where we are to that first level. And then, once that's done, that level can connect to the next level, and then we can continue that process all the way up until we finally reach the connection of the koiches themselves to Hashem. So once we make all those connections, then the shefa can start coming down. So it doesn't work the other way. It's not that Hashem has everything connected all the way up until us, and we just have to make the last connection. No, we have to start it. None of the levels are connected. We have to start with our level, the bottom, and connect it to the one level above it. And then we have to go from that level up to the next and connect all those levels. Then the pipeline will be connected and everything will come. But until you get all the way to the top, nothing's happening.
So is this happening for each person individually?
Is this happening for each person individually? It seems like, if I remember correctly from what we learned a long time ago, it seems like it works in two ways. There's an individual track, and then there's the global track.
Because, globally, there's always someone learning, right?
Hopefully.
Right. So, in some ways, it's always going on. But you're saying that has to be initiated, right? So that's why I was asking.
Okay, so Michelle's asking if that somebody's learning all the time, doesn't that mean that the pipeline is always there? And the answer is that, first of all, we're not talking about learning here, we're talking about davening. So davening is really different. It works differently than learning does.
Okay.
Of course, learning, as he has mentioned, is the greatest shefa bringer in the world, that's for sure. But nevertheless, in order for that to work, we still have to have this process. So it seems that we, as individuals and as a nation, need to make this connection. And it'll work individually and globally, that these things need to be revisited. That's what
So it's like each region of the world, like depending on...
is it regional? I don't know if it's regional.
But like sunrise and the morning and people,
Right, it's a process. Yes, it's a process. And when it's morning for us, it's night for somebody else. So, yes, the shefa is going to be working its way around the world,
right.
getting that pipeline moving.
Circular.
Yes.
Circular.
Okay. Good? Okay. Zulula. Oh, uh-oh. Go ahead.
Can you just clarify when you did your sort of listing of like the levels, your last sentence was or else nothing is happening. I wasn't sure I followed that phrase where nothing is happening.
Okay, so Dr. Kraker wants to know how exactly this works. Essentially how it works is, it works like a pipeline. So you've got the faucet at one end, and you've got the plant at the other end. And there's a hose, and there's a series of pipe connectors in between. So you got to start at the plant end, and can put the edge, the end, the last piece needs to come out where the plant is, because that's where the water is going to flow. Then you have to connect that piece to the part before it, and then that to the part before it, until you travel and you create this pipeline all the way back to the faucet itself. So until you get to that last step, which is the connector between the pipe and the faucet, nothing's going to work. You can turn on the faucet, but it's not going to make it to your plant, because until the last step is done, there's no connection. So you have to go through all of the processes in order to have the shefa make it down here to the world. Does that make sense? Oh, his camera's off, his mic's off. All right. I'm just going to assume it makes sense. All right. Good night. Back to sleep. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. However, habrachos ha'ela, these brachos of Berachos Kriyas Shema, shal Kriyas Shema, sudru al pi harazim ha'ela. They were established based on these secrets. Uba'osei hashevach va'ahilul, and it is specifically through these praises and songs to Hashem, mis'alais madregas habriya milmata lamala. The levels of creation rise up from being low to being high. Ad hiskasher hakoil, until everything is connected. The madrega hayoser al yana, on the highest level. Va'az nikshar hakoil, and then everything is connected, everything is intertwined. V'nisla ba'ari yisbarach, and everything is then reliant on and connected to Hashem's light itself. V'nimshach hashefa l'chol abruim, and that way the shefa can then spread to all creatures. V'huma shenasa b'tfilah Shemona Esrei, and that is what is accomplished through Shemona Esrei. So he kind of just segued right from step 3 to step 4, from Berachos Kriyas Shema and Kriyas Shema right into Shemona Esrei. And what he said was that by our connecting all of the dots, connecting all of the pieces of pipe up to the source, which is Hashem himself, then we can actually bring that shefa down. What brings the shefa down? That's Shemona Esrei. So Shema and its brachos are the preparation for that stage. Psukkah de Zimra is setting up the system, essentially, setting the stage for this whole process. And Karbanos is what clears the path.
Do women need to say karbanos?
So saying Karbanos is the first step, clearing the path. Once that's done, we can then get the groundwork laid. So it's all, we're ready to go. That's through the Psukkah de Zimra. Once that's set up, then we can actually work with the pipes and create the pipeline, and that is Shema and its brachos. And then finally we can turn on the faucet, and that is with Shemona Esrei. So that's the sequence of events that we go through with David. And just before 1 second, just what's interesting to note here is that if you look through the words that we say in each of these steps, it makes a lot of sense. When we talk about karbanos and really brachos, we're talking about our actions in the world. It's talking about us. We bring the karbanos. These are things that we do. That's the first step. But we're just clearing the path, that we're undoing anything that would stop any obstacles. We're undoing those, because those are things that we may have put in. We can take those out. The next step is we talk about the world. We talk about Psukkah de Zimra, looking at the world, looking at the nations, looking at the sun, and all these different parts of creation. That's the next step, because that's, again, going from down to up, which is how this system works. We start with us, and we look into the world around us, which is one step up. And then the next step that we have is Berachos Kriyas Shema. Berachos Kriyas Shema, all of a sudden we're talking about the Malachim. We're talking about what they say. We're talking about their praises. We talk about the Torah. We're talking about things that are of a spiritual nature. So we've already ascended above this world. We're now on the next level, which is talking about the spiritual realm. And then, once all of that's done, we've made the connection, then we're right there. We're directly connected to Hashem, and that's where Shemona Esrei comes in. Shemona Esrei is our direct conversation with Hashem. So once we've gone through this process of making all the connections from us, all the way up through the world, through the spiritual realms, then we jump right into talking directly with Hashem, and that's how this process of the Shefa works. Which is part of the reason it's so important that we don't have any kind of interruption whatsoever between the last words of Berchos Kriya Shema and the first words of Shemona Esrei. We don't even say Amen, because we don't want to create any interruption, because once we're there, we're at that last point where we've connected the hose to the faucet. We don't want anything stopping over there. We got to go right. We're standing before Hashem. We got to go right into conversation. There is no more obstacle. There's no more gap, and we jump right in. And that's why it's important to make sure that we connect the bracha of Goal Yisrael and Shemona Esrei. Yes. You had something?
When I was taught to daven, I don't remember the connection of women to the very beginning.
To Karbanos?
Yeah, Karbanos.
Do women need to say Karbanos is the question. So, most poskim say they don't have to. Some say they should. Most say they do not have to. So how do you get through this? I don't know exactly, but I'm going to assume you don't need it. Same reason.
Okay. Just start with Baruch.
You can start, well, say brachos. No, you have to say brachos.
Brachos.
But as far as davening, yeah.
It's so funny. I was also taught that it was really important to say Mizmor Shir Chanukah Sabayis.
No.
Mizmor
Chanukah Sabayis is an introductory psalm that's said before Pesach Zimra. It's not critical.
Not critical.
Not critical. It's powerful, but it's not critical.
Oh.
There's
Yes.
Rabbi.
Yes. Right, okay, so what Gula is mentioning here is that there are a number of publications for women who, if they're short on time and can't say all of davening, what the order of preference is as far as what to do when. If you have the women's sitter, the article women's sitter, it's right there. It says it on the page. It says what the order of preference is if you don't have time. But yeah, very important. Okay. Okay. I think we will stop here. All right, we will stop here. We will continue week after Pesach. Next week is Pesach, and so is the following week. So we will not be having our class, obviously, the next 2 weeks. We will have the week after Pesach. Everybody, I hope, saw my question on the chat. Please respond privately to me what your preferences are. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Chag Kasher V'Sameach. Geula, you do not get a vote on the location, sorry, because I know it's going to be somewhere in Israel. And we all vote for that, but unfortunately it's not realistic at this time. So everybody have a wonderful Pesach. Make sure that you enjoy the Yontif. If you haven't listened to my class, it's on the Shul YouTube page. You can listen to that. And hopefully everybody has a very successful Pesach, and we will see everybody in a couple of weeks. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you.